As we start to plan for 2026, I know one thing that I think we would all probably agree on if you showed up today, and that's that AI is not on its way, it's here. And so how we adapt to our sales and marketing strategies and fit AI into those is really going to determine, in my opinion, our success in the coming years. And so it's a really good time. We just started Q4. I told my team yesterday, if you're like everybody else, then Q4 is a time where you just kind of slow down. But, if you really want to do it right, then Q4 you use as an opportunity to prepare for the next year. So I want to tell a little story before we get started. And I'm interested to kind of get your take on it after I tell you the story. But I went to the beach this summer in Florida, and I noticed in the same probably 30-minute time span, my dad was using ChatGPT on his phone to search for a recipe for canning his peaches. And at the same 30-minute span, my 8-year-old at the time, he was using ChatGPT to search for his baseball player stats, MLB baseball stats. So I realized in that moment, it was just kind of a big moment for me. From 8 years old to 74 years old, my family is already using ChatGPT as a primary search engine. So put a 1 in the chat if you are using Google primarily today as your primary search engine, and put a 2 in the chat if you are already using ChatGPT right now as a primary search engine, whether it's on your phone or desktop or whatever. I kind of want to see where we are. Yep. Okay. A little mixture of both. I see a mixture of both. Okay, that's good. We're going to talk today about the difference between the two as it relates to how your business shows up and how your ideal customers find you. I've been hearing and talking a lot about AI and how it's influencing people in our industry. I attended ScaleCon last week, which is a great event for sales and marketing, and AI was certainly a big part of the conversation, how it's influencing buyers. But I want to be clear on kind of a technical aspect that a lot of people are asking me about. In fact, in my promotion of this webinar, I got a couple of responses in my inbox about this. AI search is largely pulling its information from the open web. Okay. So I want to make sure we're all clear on that. That includes Google indexed pages. But today we're going to talk specifically about the way that we develop content, because it's not just about keywords anymore. And keywords was most certainly a big part of SEO strategies. And we're going to talk today about developing content, which is the most critical now as AI becomes an interface between buyers and that content. So at the end of the day today, you're going to walk away with a plan in hand, and then even a free checklist that we're going to give you. Anna's going to drop the link in a little while so that you have a plan for exactly what you need to do in your business to generate content that's going to show up in AI search. So are y'all ready to get started? Give me a yes in the chat if y'all ready to get started. We'll have to see at least 2 yeses in the chat. And a quick note here, if you find today helpful, these recordings will be on YouTube, and just put the link in the chat. Be sure that if you're interested in just kind of hearing more helpful tips to grow your business, that you subscribe to our YouTube. All right. For those of you who don't know me, I've been in the industry for 20 years, specifically was the CMO of a managed services provider that grew about 130% in the course of the first 4 years that I was there. I've spoken at a lot of industry events, and you've probably seen me if you look me up online, but I don't say this to give you my credentials, but just to say I live and breathe this industry. I know the challenges that you're facing, and the things that I'm bubbling up on our YouTube channel and in these webinars are things that I am seeing actually make an impact in the industry and change things. And so I always like to make sure that I'm addressing the hottest of topics. And, my goal here is to make this a really incredible session for you. My ground rules are, please just be here now, put your phones down. I know, very hard. Maybe turn Teams off for a little bit. You've invested an hour of your day. Let's get the most out of it and give me that full attention. And we're going to have opportunity for questions if y'all want to. So I will give you permission, if you want to right now, to open up your ChatGPT browser and type in best, whether it's ISP, MSP, voice services, whatever your core product is, put that in ChatGPT and say near me. So, what is the best MSP near me? And you've probably already done this before if you're interested in sales and marketing or are on this webinar today. So you may already know, but if you're not showing up, is anybody going to do it? I'm anxious to see who's going to do it. Yeah, let's do it. All right. If you don't show up, or if you already know that you're not going to show up, that's why you're here today, right? So AI search is changing and shaping how buyers today trust people. And if you're not visible there, you're really not going to show up unless you have a plan. So that's what we're doing here. So a couple of folks said Google using its primary search engine. Some people are using ChatGPT. It really doesn't matter. It's whatever your preference. But I just want to, for concept here, there's Joseph. Hey, Joseph. Google gave us, when we search for something in Google, it gives us 10 blue links on average, right? So we're seeing the blue links to click on with paid, which who's to say if that's coming with ChatGPT or not. But those blue links that you see, some of them are sponsored or paid, it's going to give you a couple of things to click on. Well, AI, ChatGPT, or similar search engines really give you 1, 2, or 3 recommendations unless you specifically ask for more. And we're all a little bit lazy with ChatGPT, so we're not always asking for specific numbers. So that means the margin for error with AI search just got really thin. And if you're not in that top 3 that it prefers to bubble up, then you're really not going to be able to rank in AI search unless you're doing something very strategic about it. And so a lot of people, again, are, with the exception of some, skipping Google search and going into AI search. But the way that they're searching in AI is different than the way that they searched in Google. It's the architecture of the way that your consumer is searching that we need to talk about today. And also, I want to make sure, and I've said this stat before, that everyone knows for B2B, 82% of those people who are looking to buy from you are using search engines and doing their research online before they ever talk to a salesperson. So just in case we don't know already, this is really, really important and a very important topic. AI doesn't work like Google does. It summarizes, it picks kind of winners and losers. And so our goal today is make sure that you're winning. So if you did that exercise, did anybody do that exercise? Put yes in the chat if you actually did the exercise. Okay, good. Anybody show up? Thumbs up? Yeah? Okay. We had a few that did it. So here's why. If you didn't show up, oh, good. Got some on the list. Hey, we'll take it. That's great. Well, then, maybe some of y'all should teach this today. But when you go to search for something you want, it's intent, right? You're ready to purchase now. So let's say shoes. In my husband's case, here in South Mississippi, October, it's hunting season. So maybe it's a new rifle or a new laptop or whatever it is that you're searching for. In my case, it's Halloween costumes for my kids. So what is your behavior? When you go to a website, you're comparing options, or you really just want to know how much it's going to cost a lot of times. We ain't got time for searching every detail. We just want to know how much it costs. How much is this going to cost? What have I got to fork over for this new hunting rifle? Whatever it is. The way that you're searching is directly related to buyer-driven type information. And so when your buyer searches for your business or a solution to their problem that your business solves, they also want to know this information. And something that we kind of get a little sideways on is we want to be real cautious, or we don't want to give everything away on our website. But just like your behavior is to price shop, compare, so is your consumer. And it doesn't change just because you're not selling a consumer or an end user or residential type product. So if you're not putting out the information to give them what they're looking for, then you're not going to show up on AI, hands down. If we're scared to put some of this information. So you see here, we're not focused on what questions they're asking. We sometimes get in our heads and we're too internal focused, and we think we know our customer's problem, but we're not actually asking them. So maybe sometimes our perspective of what they want to know is skewed, and that's the information that we're putting on our website. But they're not going to find, if you're putting hidden content or stuff that really doesn't matter in the sales process, or you're only focusing on keywords, then you're not going to show up. And so a lot of us are guilty of doing like random blogs, for example, instead of really answering our buyers' questions, or we might avoid talking about price because, well, it depends. Like, put a 1 in the chat if you said that. If your price kind of just depends. It might depend on user, seats, users. I mean, yes, price, of course, depends. We don't talk about our competition because we're a little scared about that. So we might be creating content, but, it's not really answering those questions. And we don't want to just focus on things that make us comfortable to talk about. So that's kind of where we're going with this. I'm going to talk today about a book that has, I probably should disclaimer this. I wish that I could say that this content framework was mine, because then I'd be a lot richer today. It's Marcus Sheridan. I got to meet him a couple months ago at an event for marketing agencies. And he's written a book, They Ask You Answer, and Endless Customers, which is kind of an extension of that book. But the whole premise of the book, just to shorten it for you, highly recommend it. And Anna, I didn't ask you about this, but if you have a link to the book, if anybody wants to buy it, if you can grab that and throw it in the chat for everybody. Endless Customers specifically, that's the newest version. That's what we're going to be talking about today. But he's identified, and follow him on social media. He's great to follow, but he's identified what he calls the big five. But it's, I could go teach this and give you some version of this, but he really does it best. So we're just going to talk about the big five today. And one of my favorite exercises to do centered around this book and this process to understand exactly what questions your clients or prospects might be asking or wanting is I just did this exercise, so I know it works. Record the last few months of your sales calls or your calls with prospects. You can do this in any area of your business, by the way, if you want to make improvements. And just put that link in the chat for the book if you want to grab a copy. I recommend you sit down with your team and start looking after you take those transcripts of those calls. You can use a transcriber, AI transcriber, but what are the things that they're asking you in order to get you to close the deal? If you address those things up front all over your website, you're going to move them closer to that purchase decision without having to answer all those questions on a sales call. So we're going to talk about each of the five in this big five content framework. And then I'm going to give you some examples, specific examples of what that might look like in your business. And then we're going to actually put it to action at the end of this webinar today. Who's ready? Thumbs up or a yes in the chat. Y'all ready? Okay, great. We're going to start with the one that we're the most scared to talk about, which is price, cost. The people buying from you, just like with the hunting rifle and the laptop, and the clothes or whatever y'all like to buy, they want to know how much it costs. And if you are worried about putting on your website the exact cost, because it varies, and we've got a big fun project that we're implementing in January 26th, starting to implement across our customers that solves this exact problem. So if you're a client of mine, get ready. But I know what you're thinking. I can't put my exact price if somebody's going to hold me to it. That's why we use the word estimator. And don't say this is your exact price, but they just want clarity. They want to know what drives cost up, what drives cost down, what are the factors. And those things are okay. You do feel comfortable talking about. In my world, you put a range on there, give them an estimator and let them call you, because guess what? If they have a price and they're comfortable with the range that you've given them in an estimate from your website, then when they call you, they are 10 times hotter than the lead that called you that didn't have a clue what your price was. And then you've just wasted 30 minutes to an hour of your day talking to this person. And then when you get to price, they're not interested because they didn't know. So if we're talking about quality of lead, huge. This is a huge impact to your business. So you might want to talk about your support, advanced cybersecurity versus not, or how much setup fees, or if you're doing any sort of hours or bucket of hours, anything like that, support. What drives up cost? What keeps cost lower for your current customers? You should know this and answer this all over your website, okay? The second content type that AI looks to is problems. So think about what buyers, might experience from an issue standpoint, whether it's before they come in contact with you. That can be some of the content. But also after. Basically, what we're talking about today, the big five, is all things that make you uncomfortable. So prepare. But no one really wants to talk about what problems they might encounter. And can anybody guess? I'd like for somebody to try to take a guess in the chat. What is the most common thing that a customer in this industry, specifically with internet service providers, managed services providers, IT service providers, what is the biggest thing that they're scared of? Anybody know? Somebody's got to put it in the chat. I want to see if you can guess. What are they most? Coverage or outages for internet? That's great. Ransomware. Okay, good. The biggest thing that they are worried about is how much time it's going to take them and problems they're going to have to put out in their business to make the switch from a current provider. If they're with a current provider, they are terrified to move forward in this big change in their business because it affects so much of their time. It takes up so much of their time. So what would it look like for you to take that problem? So outages, ransomware, coverage, outages, and then also talk about how easy it is and painless. And here's really what to expect. It only takes 4 hours of your time a month or whatever that is. And, if we're selling to an IT director, you might want to get more specific. If you're doing a voice product and you're selling, maybe the main point of contact is an office manager, address all of that on your website. Again, we're going to talk about specific questions, but, also anything that your particular business gets a lot of flack for. Maybe in this industry, these service providers never pick up their phone, or they're not handling compliance correctly, or maybe, and I'm talking outside of the product things that we just talked about, specifically what might make somebody hesitant to even do business with a company like yours. Go ahead and address all of those. If you address those, you just build that trust tenfold. So start addressing problems with your content. And I'm using MSPs as an example here. This applies to obviously various industries, but this is another thing that we do not like doing. But guess what? If you're comparing yourself to a competitor of yours and you're using a headline to do that, when search engines are indexing and there is a search result or another prospect out there that's searching for the difference between your company and your biggest competitor, your content is going to pop up. How great is that? Let you be the one to guide them into the choice. We've even explored some content like top 5 marketing agencies for managed services providers and IT businesses, and put some of your competitors in there. Of course, you're going to rank yourself first, but it gives you control of the content. And for whatever reason, we're afraid maybe, we don't necessarily talk about the value between, you do in a sales call, talk about the difference between an in-house versus outsourced IT department. Of course you talk about that, or the difference between managed, fully managed, or this provider, that provider. So writing comparisons is really critical to show up in AI search, and those that are brave enough to do it, here's what we're good at, here's what we're not, it. So make an effort to put that content on your website, and that quality of the buyer gets so much better, or quality of the lead, excuse me. And then of course, reviews, best of, making a list of top providers, even if you're not on it or not number one. You definitely need to be on it. Certainly put yourself on it. Don't miss that opportunity. But I recommend putting yourself as number one, but if it's not true, then it's okay. But AI is looking for proof, case studies, testimonials, success stories. When we get busy as service providers, testimonials and case studies fall to the bottom of the barrel. And so we don't necessarily prioritize that. And so what that means is that when people are searching for content, and maybe they do come across on our website, all that we've shown them is what we think about us. What's really powerful is if you show them mostly what other people are saying about you, and it doesn't have to be sophisticated. You can take your iPhone if you're at a conference and you've got a couple clients there. You can certainly schedule quick calls with clients, talk about their experience with you, and put those on your website, transcribe them, multi-purpose the content. But you want, on the review side, you want testimonials, case studies, success stories everywhere, so that people can, as they're searching for real examples, they find it. And then the best in class is developing lists like, best voice provider in Dallas, or top MSP for healthcare, or top 5 cybersecurity solutions for small businesses, whatever those things are. And then writing those lists, of course, to put yourself at the top, that gives you that advantage. So those are 5 things, the big 5, as Marcus Sheridan calls them, that are really important to make sure that we're creating content for. So it's, keywords, the way that people are searching is just different. It doesn't mean that keywords and your foundational SEO strategies are not working. Just be clear. It just means we've got to change with the times. Before I go on, does anybody have any questions about all of that? Because we're about to get into kind of a game plan for you and get real specific on those questions. We're going to have a little workshop here, if you will. Anybody have any questions? Y'all can put in the chat or unmute for a second and ask.
I've got a question as it relates to the lists that you post.
Okay.
It might be unethical, but it is a good marketing question, which is, do you post those lists and those blogs as an anonymous or ghost blogger, or are those posts coming from your branded company?
Yeah. Where do you want to drive the traffic?
Ideally, I'd want it to drive it to our business, but if we're
Okay.
number one and the blog is coming from our business as well, then it's a
Yeah.
shameless plug number one, reader's going to think.
Yeah, I don't think that, yeah, I agree. I mean, obviously, if you could post anonymously to like a Quora, Reddit, or search in, like a medium.com or something where, I mean, that's great, of course. But I don't think, in terms of AI search, not everybody's clicking on the little link that the search engine offers. They just look for the answer.
Yeah.
They move on and go to your website, or they'll go, so I think in the context of what we're talking about, Mikey, I say put it on your website because that's kind of the source of truth for AI.
Yep.
Certainly it could be other places, but the more content you're putting on your website, and also like, I think it's okay to be like, hey, of course we're writing this, so here are all the reasons why we're better, but here's ones that are great too, because we don't do this or we do this. So I think for the purpose of AI search, I always say create the content where you want the traffic to go. And then, make sure that you're catching them with that kind of transparency in the content. Like, hey, we understand that you have options and here's why we're the best or whatever. But I think since you're writing it, that's what gives you the advantage to lead with your own opinion.
Yep. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions about that? Okay. So we're going to do a little activity. You can do this in your notes, on your desktop, or get out a notepad. I like the good old-fashioned notepad. We have, in a minute, an AI search readiness checklist that you're going to be able to take to your team or do this on your own. My guess is that some of you might have other team members you want to engage in this activity. I'm telling you right now, if you do this activity in the next 60 days in your business, you will have your entire AI search ready content plan created for 2026. And that's really what our goal is in trying to do here. The activity is, I'm going to go back to this last slide, but we're kind of getting into how you're going to develop your plan. If you see here, those big five, and then you see the quarters, we're basically going to address one of the big five every quarter in 2026. Okay. Or you could start now if you want to start now. For now, I'm going to give y'all just a second to write down 3 questions that you have heard from prospects that for a fact you do not have answered on your website. And again, I like recording past sales calls and grabbing those transcripts and then throwing those into ChatGPT and say, hey, what are the 10 most common questions I'm getting asked? But what are those 3 questions? If anybody's willing to share, please share. Example might be, how much does IT really cost for a 50-user company, or what's the difference between co-managed and managed? Maybe it's about outages or ransomware. If anybody's brave enough to put it in the chat, feel free. We'll give y'all just a minute. We'll be a little quiet for just a second. Give me a thumbs. Okay, Greg. Thank you, Greg. What percentage of clients are industry specific? Yeah, like, do you have a niche or vertical that you manage? That's good, because everybody wants to know that you know their business, right? That's great, Greg. So how many healthcare companies are you managing today? Many ask from Mikey, the master agent for AT&T. Many ask, why should she use a master agent? That's a great question instead of going directly with AT&T. You probably answer that 1,000 times a day. I bet. Eric, why are some companies charging $60 per endpoint? You love that question, though, because you can tell them what they might be getting for that $60, right, Eric? You love it. So what's average number of employees across your client base? Yep, that's good. They want to know that you can handle their size. These are all great questions. So you know what they are. So go ahead and write your top 3 down. And we're about to do a little workshopping. So where do those questions fall in this 5? So you kind of need to think about that, because what we want to do, our goal in an AI ready content strategy, is to address each of these categories once a quarter. Okay. So average number of employees across your client base, that would probably go into problems, I would think, like problems that they're, want to make sure that you can handle them. Cost, of course, why are some companies charging $60 per endpoint while others are 35 to 45? That's great. Why should I choose a master agent instead of going directly with AT&T? Mikey, that falls under comparison, right? So all of these that you're dumping here, they go into a category. And like I said, one of the best things you can do and the best use of your time, if you're a founder, owner, marketing leader, sales leader, take your transcripts. I hope that all of you are recording your sales calls. If you're not, do that first. Record your sales calls, take those transcripts, throw them into ChatGPT, learn what your I say top 20. Of course, if you're doing 5 pieces of content times 12 for the, year, one each quarter, that's your number right there. But we need to get these questions. And also don't be afraid, like this becomes a really fun activity for your team, right? Put everybody that knows that interfaces with your customer, your onboarding team, your account managers, your support team. And that's kind of, to me, once they're a customer, that's kind of a different exercise, but certainly like onboarding, what are the questions that we're getting on the first few calls with these customers, these existing customers? Go ahead and address those too. So take those questions, take this, we'll give you this readiness checklist in a minute. That can become your Q4 activity to prepare you for your content plan in 2025. So I'm going to give you a little formula real quick, and then we're going to go through each of the 5 again. We're at halfway through this webinar, so we'll do this activity, and then we'll have time for other questions. You might get a little time back if we don't have a lot of questions. But I'm going to give y'all kind of a formula and then a roadmap. The formula is going to be just a little structure of how to write this, and then I'll give you some examples for each of the 5, of the big 5. But here's the formula, okay? So 1 is you're going to start with a clear, direct answer and answer it as soon as you can. And kind of, Mikey, just going back to use your blog content you were saying as an example, if we're writing about top providers and we want to put us at the top, like, is that misleading? Go ahead and put that, explain that early. Hey, we're writing this list. Of course, we think we're the best because we do all these things. But we're going to give you a list of 5 that we also think if we're not a fit for you, here's who would be, or something like that. So clear, direct. If they are going to AI search to search for you, and then they get to your website, you want to bubble up exactly what they want to know at the very top. So don't bury it in your 3rd paragraph, lead with it. And then make sure that you use the exact words your buyers are using, not the words that your internal team is using. And a big one in this industry, and I might get some hate for this, okay? But for the most part, depending on the size of your customer, now if you have enterprise with an IT director that understands the industry deeply, then they're going to say voice or VoIP if you're selling that product. An office manager is probably going to say phones, just for an example. So really challenge yourself to use the exact words that your ideal buyer is actually looking for. And that's what becomes your headline of the article or the video or the piece of content. And then the structure of this really matters. So bullets, short paragraphs, AI is going to pull content that's easy for it to parse out. So subheadings, that type of thing, the structure really matters. And then just get comfortable being really transparent. I guarantee you, if you are willing to answer questions that your competition won't, it will pay off. The more honest and specific you are, the more trust you're going to build and the more likely AI is to recommend you. So starting with clear, direct answer, don't bury it. Use the exact words that your buyer is looking for. Structure matters, and then be really transparent. Be willing to be really transparent. So the way this kind of looks, I kind of gave some examples, but here's what you might do for what does it cost? And I think, who was it, Eric, that asked this question, why are some? So yours would be, really specific, but, what is managed IT? Also think, do your customers call it that? IT service, what do they call it? You want to make sure that you aren't just using your inside lingo, but you want to list factors that drive up costs, factors that might make it go down. That could be your content for that. Addressing problems, why people in our industry fail their clients, why it didn't work out with your last provider. What happens if there is a big a gap in compliance requirements. Why is switching feel so painful? Let's address all of the things that might go wrong so that we can talk about how we do it right, how we make it easier. So these are addressing kind of those hard questions. Also comparisons, just examples. I know not all of your MSPs, of course, there's a comparison of in-house versus having a managed services provider do your IT services. Also keep in mind, this could also link to that price, like that, to me, if you're talking about comparison between in-house and outsource, you're also going to be talking about price at the same time. So you can do links to that price related blog post or whatever that content is. Provider A versus provider B, make sure you're one of those two. And then managed versus co-managed, or whatever the case may be, MSP versus MSSP, whatever you think that they are really asking. And remember, we're talking about your ideal customer, because there's also going to be people who are like, well, if we're selling to this person, they say this, or they're selling to this person, they might think this. We're talking about the customer that you most want to have buying from you. Okay. And then reviews and case studies, how we helped this healthcare client cut down time. And the great thing is, whoever mentioned, Greg, I think mentioned the niche, how many customers are you helping and whatever. Then when you get on the sales call, they've already seen your success, or you're giving your sales team more ammo to be able to reference this on their own sales calls. So you're also not just adding value for AI, you're adding value for your whole team. But a case study that details how you did IT support for a 200 user law firm, testimonials in their own words, videos, and then transcribing that, turning it into a blog post. And then that kind of going back to that list, here's some examples. I mentioned this: top whatever you are in Dallas, Texas, best IT support options for financial services firms. I mean, if you're writing this kind of content, even if you have a couple of different verticals that you serve, still write the content for all of them, right? Remember, you're becoming the authority here, right? Okay. So the first thing that's not on this roadmap, I guess it is under identify. Not only do you need to identify those top questions that we talked about, multiple ways you can do that, but you need to know who your buyer is. If you don't know exactly who your ideal buyer is, your persona, if you've not done that work, that's extremely important. Or if you have internal disagreement between who your ideal person to sell to is, go look at your top 20 customers and look at profitability. That's a good way to decide. I always say, if you're trying to decide what vertical to look into or focus on, but figure out who that buyer is, identify those top questions. I say, get you a bunch of them, maybe 50 if you can, make it a fun activity in your office, and then create content that answers them through these big 5 pillars. Be sure to publish it in a clear, transparent format, optimize it for AI and SEO. So kind of going back to making sure that those words that they're searching for are in there. This is where, like, keywords are not dead. It's just changing. And you need to make sure that in the content you're writing, that you're also thinking about things like keywords and traditional SEO. And then repurpose, number 4, across multiple platforms. Blog content is great, certainly easiest to write. However, in my opinion, and Anna on my team, who's on this webinar with us today, she knows there is never a time where we have one piece of content that stays one piece of content, right? We're always creating a video to throw on our YouTube that goes along with it. You can also add it to social media, of course, email marketing. We have a LinkedIn newsletter that gets a lot of the same copy that we're putting other places. So, realistically, you can create one piece of content that can turn into a dozen pieces or more. So that's a whole webinar. I think I actually talked about how to do this on a past webinar on our YouTube channel, but we shouldn't just be producing one piece of content and have it stay one piece of content, right? We want to make sure we're duplicating this so that AI really picks it up. And then obviously we want to look back and always use data to measure. And if you don't have the ability to use a tool like, Google Analytics to see what's actually happening on your website, then find me after this and I can show you how to do that. Because the worst thing we can do is do all this work and not know what worked and what got us the new traffic on our website that we're getting. So make sure you measure what's working, always improve. Of course, video to me is a wonderful platform for engagement. A lot of people are concerned and shy or don't have the bandwidth to do video. Of course, you want to replicate this content as much as you can, as much as you have the bandwidth for, and then measure it. This will build your system to make sure that you have everything you need to be successful with AI search. And now I've teased it enough. We have an AI search readiness checklist. This allows you to score yourself on how you're doing with AI search. If I were running your marketing department, I would keep this checklist and do it now and then save it. Go back a year from now, do this exercise that I taught you today, and then score yourself again. Because if you're doing this exercise correctly, then there is no doubt that you will improve your AI search readiness by the end of the year. We have lots of time for questions. So first of all, everything's in the chat. The book that I talked about, the AI readiness list, and a link to our YouTube if you'd like to subscribe. Is there anybody that just wants to talk AI strategy, AI content strategy? Any questions about what we talked about? We have 20 minutes. If you need to drop off, feel free. But if anybody wants to hang out, we can certainly do that here. Is anybody already doing a lot of this? Nobody's doing it? That's why we're all here, to learn. Love it.
I've got a question. Do you have any good strategies to back into blogs and keywords that people are already searching? Like any analytics that I can search for where I might not know what the best words are for our particular industry. I might think that it's a word, but it actually isn't providing any statistics that it's being searched. It's like in a long tail. Are there any ways?
Have you used SEMrush?
I've heard of it, but I haven't.
Okay, that we have that. And so since we're helping you, we'll be able to do that for you. But yeah, SEMrush is the best for that because honestly, we've had a lot of situations where we brought a new client on, we're asking them, which I know that we are the marketing experts, but we want to hear from them. Like, what do you think are the top keywords? And a lot of times they'll give us keywords and then, the search volume for that over the last 6 years is like 4 people. So let's not go after that keyword. But it's a great kind of litmus test to say, like, here's what I think they are. And you can, you can even ask chat, of course, to act as an SEO strategist and give you those, but we always want to use what data we know, which is the SEMrush tool, which is a little expensive. So I know we'll be pulling that for you. We can certainly help you with that, but that's my favorite tool to use for that.
Great. Thank you.
And by me, I mean my team. I'm not digging at SEMrush all the time, but Anna knows all about it. Let's see if I got some more questions. What do you know about the legal obligations in the AI space? That's actually a great question. Eric, I join a group of marketing agency owners 3 times a year where we talk about this kind of stuff all the time. I think that, it depends on your utilization of AI. I don't believe that writing content is going to cause any, legal, unless you're using AI copy and saying things that are factually incorrect, which I don't advise. But I think using real customer testimonials, doing these checklists, none of that is any legal. And my dad's an attorney actually, so we do talk about this a good bit, but nothing legally wrong. Now, when it comes to other tools and resources not related to marketing content, I know that there are some legal components of that, but nothing, as it relates to writing for AI. If you recommend certain tools and they use it wrong, tell me about that. I don't know if I understand that question.
Well, for example, say you recommend like ChatGPT or Claude or something, and they end up putting confidential information that then it trains on because it's not secured properly, and then their proprietary information's out for everyone to know, and do you bear the responsibility for recommending that tool?
Yeah. I don't know. You mean as a marketing agency, like my recommendation to use AI?
Yeah.
Well, it can be like my recommendation to go to a park, and if you use a ride at the park incorrectly, if you hang upside down on the ride at the park, is it my fault? As a marketing professional, if you were to enter into a contract with me, you see, and some people on the call have seen this, there is a component of AI being used in my business. We are a human AI human agency, which means that anything that we're producing has 2 layers of human touch on it for fact checking and things like that. Privacy policy on my website or anything that I produce is like, when you're using AI tool, you're responsible for that. I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't feel like in terms of writing content on your website, as long as you as the provider are factually correct, then I don't feel like you're at risk. Always consult your legal professional before making any decisions that might influence others. I'm not that, but I have some good attorneys. And from a recommendation standpoint, I'm not recommending a specific tool. The whole purpose of this webinar is to tell everyone on this call, other people are using this to search for providers. And so the way to get searched for and brought up in these providers in these search engines is to make sure that you're creating content that answers questions, because the way that we're searching in AI is just different from Google search. If that makes sense. Any other questions? Well, y'all know where to find me because you've gotten lots of emails from me to promote this webinar. We do send this recording out for your teams to use. The AI readiness checklist can be used by you guys. Make sure you download it. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to be here, and feel free to follow up with any questions if you have anything you want to discuss. Always at the Business Growers, I would be remiss if I didn't say, you look me up on LinkedIn. She just threw my LinkedIn in the chat, and feel free to DM me if you have any questions or want to talk about growing your own marketing. If you don't have the bandwidth to do any of this, we can help you.